coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. My name is Eric Fisher. I'm with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation's Eastern Shore office based in Easton, Maryland. It's wonderful to be here on the Lower Shore tonight. We are a co-sponsor of this event with the Wicomico Environmental Trust, which is your local watershed organization. As nonprofits, I should state at the outset that neither CBF nor WET endorse or support candidates for elected office, but we do place a priority on education, and that is why we are here tonight. And we are privileged to be here tonight with almost every candidate for our county council here in Wicomico County. And I have to say that these are some very courageous people, because we have some work to do when it comes to the environment in Wicomico County. But at the same time, we don't want to minimize the fact that a lot has already been done, and that we can be proud and build on the successes that have been done. We have industry on the Lower Shore that is switching to clean energy. We have towns that are updating their plans for growth, the farming community, which is installing practices to stop pollution and clean our waterways. So there's a lot going on that we can really take pride in and benefit from and build on. The answers to environmental challenges are not always easy, but we are of the firm belief that step one is a conversation, and that is why we are here tonight. Some of these conversations are really encouraging to us, because we are starting to see challenges turn into opportunities. One example would be a study that CBF recently released showing that the Chesapeake Bay brings $100 billion in benefit to the region on an annual basis, and that a clean Chesapeake Bay would bring an additional $22 billion in economic benefits on an annual basis. So that's one piece of good news. And we are very hopeful that this conversation, that this is only the start, that this will continue from tonight and in moving forward. But first things first, just a couple quick points on how this works. I'll call your attention to the agendas that you may have received. If you have not picked one up, feel free to run back out to the back table and do that. On the back of the agenda are the audience participation information. And I wanted to highlight the method that we're going to use to take your questions, because we definitely want this to be a conversation. We're going to have questions collected on note cards. We will turn them into our moderator, who will then present them to the candidates in the latter portion of the agenda. That is your ticket to ask these folks a question. So be sure to capture your thoughts and your question on the note cards. Hillary Gibson with our office will be around to collect your note cards about halfway through the session. And I think with that, I can turn it over to Aaron Hogue with the Wicomico Environmental Trust, who will introduce our moderator for the evening. Aaron?
Good evening, and welcome to the Wicomico County Environmental Forum. I'm Dr. Aaron Hogue. I'm president of the Wicomico Environmental Trust. I'd like to thank all the candidates with us tonight for participation. In the last 4 years, it has become clear that the issues of pollution management and management of our natural resources are no longer back burner concerns. Regardless of political persuasion, elected officials are now addressing everything from storm surge and sea level rise to groundwater contamination, to finding a balance between pollution reduction and environmental and economic development. We'll hear from the candidates this evening on 3 topics: energy and climate, Chesapeake Bay restoration, and growth and land use. The questions have been formulated by Don Rush, our moderator this evening. Don is Delmarva Public Radio's news director. He has 35 years of experience in broadcast journalism, reporting on national, regional, and local politics. Welcome, Don.
Thank you. And just a housekeeping issue here. We'll have 2 minutes for opening statements, and then we will get to the questions. Responses from each candidate will be 1.5 minutes. There will be 30 seconds, by the way, for rebuttal if somebody feels that they do want to respond. When we go to the audience, then the candidates will have 1 minute for a response to those questions, and obviously a 30-second rebuttal if someone chooses. So just to get that out of the way. Of course, Wicomico County holds about more than 100,000 people, encompassing more than 374 square miles. Cutting through the heart of the county is the Wicomico River, upon which sits the city of Salisbury with a population of just over 31,000. And much of the county is made up of farms and watershed. For decades, the region has been struggling with growth and how to restore the Chesapeake Bay while taking in the interests of environmentalists, farmers, and developers. And this evening, we hope to hear how the candidates to resolve these competing interests. But first, we want to begin with the candidates who will introduce themselves in a 2-minute address, and we begin with Bob Culver.
Thank you, Mr. Rush. I'm proud to be here. Let me stand up. I would like to tell you that my name is Bob Culver. I've been on Wicomico County Council for 4 years. Environmental trust and environmental concerns are a very important part to me. I live on the Wicomico River. I live down in Whitehaven, so I get a chance to see firsthand what's in the river, what's coming down the river, and what type of wildlife we have around the river. There's a lot of ideas we have. Wicomico County is taking a proactive stance. We just finished what's called a bioswell down by the Upper Ferry, which will catch the water coming down from Upper Ferry Road and then go ahead and filter that water before it goes into the river. We need to do that along all of our watersheds. Whitehaven Road, where I live, is a great example of big ditches on the side. So it gets a runoff from every street excuse me, going down the road there, and we need to put in what we call stormwater retention ponds. That will help us filter the water, and we can work with the state. The state owns the land on both sides of the road going down where I live, but at the same time, we can work that throughout most of the county and hit most of the watersheds. So it is an important part for all of us. We have children coming along, and we want them to enjoy the river as much as we have for its recreational as well as its economic benefits. Thank you.
And Rick Pollitt.
Hi, I'm Rick Pollitt, and it's been my honor to serve as your first county executive for the last 8 years. My family left Liverpool, England in the 1640s and came to the eastern shore of Virginia. And 20 years later, they moved up to Somerset County. Around 1700, they landed in Allen, where we've been ever since. I live in the house that's been in my family for more than 200 years, and after all this time, I don't think we're going to go anywhere else. I say all that to say this. I was born and raised here. I know what it's like to grow up in rural Maryland. I know what it's like to have the village experience growing up. I've been surrounded by farms and fields and woods and rivers and creeks all my life. I have a deep, abiding love for the nature around us, and I know that's why I'm here. I know that's why most of us are here. I think at heart we're all environmentalists. We all care for the place where we live. What has discouraged me is that there's been so much of an us against them mentality develop over the years, where it seems like we're compartmentalizing our positions, that we're living in silos, that if you're an environmentalist, you have to feel one way. If you're a farmer, you have to feel another way. If you're a business person, you have to feel a third way. We've got to tear down these silos. We've got to understand that for our community to be whole, for our community to be strong, we do have obligations as citizens. We are stewards of our environment. We have to develop sound policy for how we manage our resources. We have to do it in an affordable way. We have to have the tools that makes our work affordable. We have to have a partnership with the state. So much of what we've been dealing with have been burdens that have been one-sided, coming down with mandates. We can't keep doing that. First of all, our hearts aren't in it when we're being told to do it. We have to be brought to the table. We have to demand our place. We have to demand our voices be heard. That's what we've been doing. We've been collaborating. We've been reaching out. We've been trying to establish those partnerships that will let us do well by the citizens that depend on us. Thank you.
John Cannon.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Eric and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, as well as Linda and the Wicomico Environmental Trust for sponsoring this tonight, and each of you for coming out here, as well as those watching at home on PAC 14. My name is John Cannon. I grew up in Wicomico County, graduated from Salisbury University. I'm in the property management business. In 2006, I had the honor to be on the county council as president of the council, and I see a lot of familiar faces here from those experiences. I enjoyed every one of them. You can't be on the county council in Wicomico County without being concerned about the environment. We're the #1 agricultural county in the state of Maryland. We also depend very heavily on tourism. How much more environmentally related could you be? The key that we have to pay attention to over these next 4 years, especially over these next couple of years, is maintaining that very, very fine balance between being good stewards of the bay and mindful of the individuals and the businesses that support our very economy on the Eastern Shore. That's the key. I know Larry Hogan's position running for governor. I was very surprised. I was somewhat pleased to hear that Lieutenant Governor Brown at Salisbury University had said he was in support of environmental measures, but he did say specifically not at the expense of the farmer. And I think that is what it's about. And like Rick said, it has to be a combined effort on the part of everyone. I really don't think this is going to be about ideology anymore. It's about funding. With the mandates that have come down from the state, we do need to work together as a team. We need to work together to get that funding that's necessary, and it's going to have to come from the state. It's going to have to come from the federal government because we're talking a lot of money. So with that, I'd just like to say, Allison Prost, who's the head of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, had made one comment that it's going to take everybody at the table in order for this to work. And I would appreciate a seat at that table to help us get to where we need to be. Thank you very much.
Matt Holloway.
Again, I'd like to thank everybody for the opportunity to be out here. As you can see, I'm not wearing a suit tonight, and that's so I could stand out in the middle here. So I'm a fifth-generation farmer from Wicomico County, grown up here my whole life. Also a businessman here in Wicomico County. I own a sod farm on the west side of Wicomico County, and also a hydroponic lettuce farm where we grow hydroponic lettuce that we sell to local restaurants and grocery stores. I love to say that I'm a farmer because we are the first true environmentalists. Our business depends on the environment. If we don't have a healthy environment, if we don't have a healthy field, we don't get the crops that we desire. Let me also highlight some of the great things that we've accomplished over the last 4 years. One of those being recently we've started doing 5 demonstration projects, and actually Bob highlighted one of those down in Whitehaven Road by the ferry. We have used grant monies that we've received from Chesapeake Bay Foundation and leveraged those to get state monies in order to do these projects. That shows our commitment to the environment. We also have a membership in the Clean Chesapeake Coalition. The Clean Chesapeake Coalition is a coalition of rural counties who are extremely concerned about the state of our bay, and we want to target the main source of pollution in the bay, which is the Conowingo Dam and the river coming out of Pennsylvania. We want to make sure that whatever we are doing locally, we want to make sure that it's not being negated by what's coming from upstream. So really, and part of this question was, what are our goals, environmental goals? What we want to do, what I want to do is what's right and what's affordable for the citizens here in Wicomico County. Thank you.
Laura Mitchell.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And Matt, I'm not wearing a suit either, but I stand out for a different reason. You may have noticed I'm the only female running for county council. I think that gives me a unique perspective on a lot of things. One of those being that I guess as mothers we're often very protective of our children and our grandchildren. One of my earliest memories is learning to swim in Shoemaker Pond. My grandson has to learn in the pool at the Y because we can't swim in Shoemaker anymore. I would like to see that change for his children and his grandchildren. I'd like to get back to where we can swim in our lakes and our ponds and our rivers. That's probably a little bit longer term goal, but at least the lakes and the ponds. I've been on the city council for 3.5 years, and I'm very involved with the budget. I'm an accountant, and in my business, we don't have D's and R's. We have D's and C's, debits and credits. The bottom line is they all have to balance. They all have to work together and come out balanced at the bottom. And that's an effort that takes everybody at the table, everybody working together. And it's not this us against them. Mr. Pollitt is right. That doesn't work. All we get is a lot of noise and not much work. And that's what initially spurred me to run for the city council, is that we needed to get more work done. I think we're doing that. We're doing a great job there. And I would like to continue that effort with the county and bring that partnership, help build that partnership between the city and the county for environmental issues, among a bunch of other things. We have done a lot in this city. We've put nets on the outfall pipes. We've done tree in the box, I call them, the terra firma storm drains, and made a lot of efforts. One of the mayor's goals is swimmable and fishable in 10 years. I'm not sure we can get there in 10 years because it is very costly. But we do have to find that balance, and my policy preference and practice has been an inclusive approach, bringing everybody together figure out what works and what we can do. Thank you.
Ernest Davis. He's not here. I'm sorry. Mark Kilmer.
Well, I would like to be Ernie Davis since he's running unopposed, but I will settle for just being Mark Kilmer tonight. I want to thank you for putting on this forum. I certainly appreciate it, and giving those of us who are running in District 2 a chance to talk about these issues. District 2 is probably the most rural of all the councilmanic districts. It probably has the most farmland. It has the Nanacoke River and the Wicomico River in it. So the issues that are being discussed here tonight are of special importance to the residents of District 2. As has been said before, all of us are environmentalists. All of us care about the environment and having a clean environment. And of course, saying that masks the fact that there are a lot of different opinions about how to go about doing that. And it also masks the fact that some of us have different opinions on how to pay for that and the trade-offs that need to be made. But we all do share a common goal. And I think that that's important to keep in mind not only tonight, but for the next 4 years. No matter who's elected to the county council and to the county executive's office, we're going to be facing some very strong challenges in terms of environmental issues and a lot of other issues. For instance, the watershed implementation plan is something that the county is going to have to grapple with, and it has a very big price tag. And Wicomico County isn't exactly flush with cash right now. And so there's going to be some really tough choices that need to be made about the projects that are funded there and about partnering with the city of Salisbury and the city of Sharptown and Hebron and other towns to and nonprofit groups and for how to pay for that. And I know if you elect me during that time, I'm sure there's a few people in this room that won't agree with what I do or what I say. I know that Mike Predel, he's a resident of District 2, so you're going to have a very strong advocate no matter who's elected in District 2, kind of harassing whoever's in that seat. But my door will always be open. My email address will always be there. My phone will always be on, and I will always be there to listen with an open mind and to listen to conversations that have facts and figures. And that's what I'm focused on, and that's what I hope you give me the chance to do for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Kirby Travers.
Yes, hi. Kirby Travers. I'm glad to be here tonight. Mark explained District 2, very rural, agricultural, a lot of water. I've been over there for 40-some years of my life. I am an outdoorsman. I love being outside. I think it should be clean outside. I'm new to the whole political arena, but I look very forward to the challenges of trying to get to a better environment than what we have now. I really am not sure what the process is to get there. It's going to be me, if I'm elected, listening to folks that are way more intelligent about the environment than me. And then it'll be us to try to figure out how to make the funding work. But, I like the environment, and thank you for being here.
Larry Dodd.
I wasn't going to stand up. Us three on the end decided we weren't going to, but since everybody else did, I felt obliged to. So I am standing up, and I need the room, actually. I can't say that I am a fifth generation or my family's been here for 300 years, but I am proud of the fact that my father retired from the Navy after 23 years, took a job at Wallops Island, and this is where we ended up. So I have roots here now. I've got 13-year-old twins. I'm the proud father of 13-year-old twins, and they're my world, and I work for them. If I get elected, I'll work for them, and then I'll work for you all. I have a biology degree from Salisbury University, biological sciences. I have a master's degree. So I have a minor in chemistry, so I'm well aware of the environment. District 3 is what I'm running for, and it's the southeast quadrant of Wicomico County, which encompasses Fruitland, Powellville, and Parsonsburg, that side of Route 50. And I ride those back roads, so we don't see the river, but we see some of its tributaries. And I'm very concerned. I really love seeing the farmland. I love seeing the forest there, and I do my part in working for the environment, trying to keep the environment the best that we can do. But what we need to do, we need to jumpstart this economy. We can't fund the Chesapeake Bay Foundation if we don't have money. We need to jumpstart this economy. Then we need to help fund it. You guys are doing an excellent job educating the public, and that's about all we can do right now. We all have to come together. We have to work collectively as a group, and we have to do our part. We can't keep blaming each other. We can't keep blaming the farmers. We have to work with our neighbors, our counterparts in Baltimore City and Washington, D.C., because we're not the only ones that surround the Chesapeake Bay. So thank you very much.
Josh Hastings.
Thank you. I'm Josh Hastings. I'm also running for District 3.
Check 1, 2.
And is this the remix? I'll go quickly. Better party over there. I'll go either way. So basically, my family's been here on the Eastern Shore since the 1630s, and I grew up on a poultry and produce farm in Mardella. For the past 3 years, I've worked as the policy manager for Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, and I do help. Our organization helps farmers and other landowners put voluntary conservation easements on the property. Prior to my current job, I worked as a legislative assistant for the chair of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee in the Maryland State Senate. I have 2 bachelor's degrees from Salisbury University, one in business and the other political science. And I'm currently painstakingly in the process of trying to finish my master's in public policy at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I serve on the executive committee of Partners for Open Space and the executive board of the Rural Maryland Council. And I'm also the chairman of the legislative committee of the Rural Maryland Council. And additionally, I'm a Lead Maryland Fellow, which is a 2-year leadership program for agricultural and natural resources in rural communities. I am, just as far as my environmental goals, I want to help the county continue to find ways to save taxpayer money through green energy investments or opportunities. I want to, if the county chooses to go forward with trying to find the right balance between growth and keeping our rural industry strong, then I'd like to help out. I want to continue to help farmers receive payment and credit for conservation practices they are doing. I want to help Wicomico regain its mouth certification. I want to make sure that that we are continuing to make sure that the MAST, the other program which determines how much pollution is coming into the bay, that it is the best system and the best system possible. I want to make sure that there's adequate monies continues for cover crops through the Bay Restoration Fund or other pieces. I want to make sure that we have great access to our parks and to our forests. And lastly, I want to be able to help use the relationships that I've built up in Annapolis over the years to make sure that we have another voice for Wicomico County in Annapolis. So thank you very much for being here.
And Joe Holloway.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name's Joe Holloway, and I'm running for Council District 5. Council District 5 runs from the Worcester County line on the north side of the county all the way to Delmar and a little bit on the west side of Delmar. I grew up in Wicomico County. I've lived here all my life, worked in several different fields. One of the first jobs I had when I was 12 years old was working on a poultry farm. I've been involved in the poultry business pretty much since then, one way or the other. Somebody mentioned a while ago that the farmers are the environmentalists. I remember I worked for a fellow named John Idlett, and we would spread chicken manure on the farm. Chicken manure, by the way, that I put in the manure spreader with a pitchfork. You're not high on the food chain when you're 12 years old when you work on a poultry farm. So anyway, I remember Mr. Idlett telling me, he says, now don't get close to those ditches. He says, that manure doesn't do us any good when it's in the ditch. All it does is make the weeds grow. So that was my first recollection of, being environmentally friendly. One of the things that I think we need to strive for as a council is to really find out what is the problem. Where is the problem coming into our river locally? A few months ago, I sent an email to the city and asked for the total spillage from the septic, from the waste treatment plant that had gone into the river for the past few years. That information was denied me. They didn't want to give that information out. So I think that's one of the goals. We need to find out where that information, or where that problem's coming from. The farmers get blamed for a lot of things that I think that's probably not their fault. Thank you.
Okay, so those are all the candidates, and we'll go to some questions, and each candidate will have a minute and a half to respond to the question. We certainly have 30-second rebuttals as we wrap through the entire group. There have been many efforts to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. One of the latest, of course, is the Environmental Protection Agency's pollution diet, which has often been challenged, sometimes in the courts. We also have the watershed implementation plans. How would you deal with those? Do you approve of those efforts? And do you approve of, say, joining the Clean Chesapeake Coalition? And we'll start with Rick Pollitt.
It's not whether I approve or disapprove of the programs that we're proposing. I will say that I did approve and have joined with the County Council of the Clean Chesapeake Coalition. And it's for the very same reason that I spoke earlier about collaboration. We've seen too many things from good intentions being mandated with less than aggressive and thorough background study. For instance, when the phosphorus management tool was proposed, we saw a letter from the president of the University of Maryland acknowledging that the study they were supposed to do in advance of the regulations was supposed to carry out the administration's agenda. Now, how do you have confidence that an independent study is going to tell you the truth when it's already being tied to an agenda? We've seen so many things just come down without proper preparation just because it can. It's not that we disagree with what they want to accomplish, because many times we do want to accomplish the same thing. But we have to demand and we have to expect that we're going to combine resources with all of the other players around the Bay watershed. First, to make sure that the fundamental science, the fundamental understandings that are the basis for the follow-up regulations are based on sound and true principles that we can then take to see how we can apply them to ourselves.
John Cannon.
Thank you. Yes, the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, I think that was a very good move on the part of Wicomico County. You have 10 counties that signed up with this organization, and those are 10 counties that probably said, we need to know what's really going on here. The state of Maryland says this is the way it is, this is what you're going to do. I mean, in your right mind, if you're not quite sure of what the true circumstances are, you reach out to try to find whatever information you can to make sure you're making the right choice. It's a matter really of making sure you're hitting the right target. Let's say we do everything they want us to do, and the Conowingo Dam, we can talk about that because that's a big issue. Let's say it overflows. It could undo everything we've done in 10 years. More recently, in a study that they did as far as what the impact was of the Conowingo Dam, they did it in about a 4.5-mile radius, but it didn't actually go out into the Chesapeake Bay area. So you have to question that. Another part of this is more recently, someone from the Department of Natural Resources in an interview actually made the comment that the waters at the Conowingo Dam are toxic. This hasn't been discussed before, but now that's come out, and that's part of what the Clean Chesapeake Coalition is unsurfacing and bringing to the attention of everyone. It's a matter of collaboration. With the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, we need help when we're going to Annapolis, or if we have to address any issues with the federal government. We would also need the help of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Comico Environmental Trust. Thank you.
Matt Holloway.
In regards to our WIP, as I said before, we are starting to do our part. We have the 5 demonstration projects that we're working on right now that will go towards addressing our WIP. We're looking for our best management practices that we can put in place affordably. And that's the key, is to make it affordable to the taxpayers of Wicomico County. We can't bankrupt ourselves by trying to address our WIP. Clean Chesapeake Coalition, you know, I look at it from a business perspective. If I can use a small amount of money to make the biggest impact on the health of the Bay, I'm willing to take that risk. No matter what, you know, if we have even a small percentage chance of actually achieving what our big goal is, I think it's worth the risk to take that to try to clean up one of the major point sources of pollution in the Bay and make sure that whatever monies we're putting into Bay restoration, Bay cleanup, and river cleanup is not being negated by what's coming downstream.
Laura Mitchell.
Thank you. Yeah, the thing that rings in my mind is thinking about things like the stormwater fee that came down. When the initial projections were multi-million dollars per year. I believe it was $8 million a year we had in our budget initially. And then we started drilling down on that. We thought, wow, there's no way we can do this. So we started drilling down, and it turns out that the formula that they used was a kind of one-size-fits-all, assuming that we didn't have the land to do plantings on, and that we had to buy every piece of land that we were talking about, assuming that we had to hire staff, made a lot of assumptions about things that were going to cost money and piled all those on. Once we started weeding through it and saying, no, we have land, we have personnel, we have resources with Salisbury University with our GIS and the mapping and a lot of other things, we found that the cost was going to be much, much less. So I think when we look at that, we have to know all the pieces that made up that whole. I'm one of those people that likes to pull everything apart and see if I can put it back together, make it look the same. I think that a big part of what we're doing right now, Salisbury rebuilding their wastewater treatment plant, that's a $60 million project. It's unfortunate that we had to do it twice, but it's happening, and that is a big contributor and will help a lot. But I don't like the top-down approach. I prefer a bottom-up approach. We know what works here. We know what we're doing wrong, what we can do better, and we're working towards that with rain barrel programs and different things like that. And it's nowhere near enough, but it's a good start.
Mark Hilmer.
With projects like the Watershed Implementation Plan, as I mentioned before, the price tag is huge. So the Executive's Office and the Council is going to have to work together to see what is the most effective projects to be focusing our scarce resources on and working on those. I mean, I think the 5 projects that were mentioned before, the ones at Pemberton and Shoemaker and at Upper Ferry and those other ones, I think that's a good start, but we need to focus on the ones that are going to give the county the most return on the investment for taxpayer dollars. And frankly, I would like to see some ability to measure what those are doing once they're put in place. Be able to come back in a year or 2 years or 5 years and see, are they achieving the goals that was intended, and if they're not, why, and if they are, what can we do to replicate that elsewhere? We don't have the resources to be implementing the entire watershed implementation program. The price tag is just too huge. So we really need to focus our dollars where they will have the maximum impact. And for the reasons outlined before, I do support joining the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, but I don't see much need in just saying what John Cannon said before. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I'm kind of at a disadvantage. I don't really know the programs or the coalition. I think you could research it, but you're going to get a oddball opinion. I would look forward to diving into the programs that are in place now to see what is working and what's not working. I am kind of a money guy, and if it's not working and we're spending X amount of dollars on something, that's not good. Like everybody else wants the most bang for the buck. I'm truly sorry for not knowing the programs. I just think it's, until I can see what ours are, I really don't want to make a decision on where I stand. Thank you.
Larry Dodd.
Thank you. Joe, we don't have to stand up now. I want to tell a little story. It's going to be quick, though. Several years ago when I was younger, I was in my 20s, a good friend of mine lives in Saxes, Virginia, and I used to go down there. He's a waterman. I used to go down there and help him oyster all the time. I think they started oystering in October and did a lot of crabbing. Today, he's not oystering. He can't oyster. There's no oysters in the bay. He's not even crabbing in the bay. He has to go to the James River to crab, so he drives about 4 hours every day just to fish his crab pot. So it's kind of it's kind of sad seeing that man struggle to make a living, and that's happening to a lot of farmers. As far as or not farmers, watermen. But as far as joining the coalition, of course I'd join the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, and I would support any coalition to help clean the bay. I would do anything as long as it doesn't affect our farmers and our property rights. I'd do anything to represent the people of Wicomico County. As far as regulations, you can put as many regulations in effect as you want. A lot of them are being ignored now. Let's kind of look at the regulations that we already have and try to enforce those. You make more regulations, then you're going to have more regulations that aren't being enforced. So yes, of course, I do support doing anything to help our watershed and our Chesapeake Bay. Thank you.
Josh Hastings.
First of all, I'd like to say that the TMDL, there's a lot of acronyms being thrown around, but the TMDL, the total maximum daily load, as a vehicle for basically a diet on the amount of pollution and crud that can go into the bay, I do think that that is the best system and best vehicle for accounting for all of that pollution. It's not just sediment, but it's nitrogen and phosphorus. As far as, when it comes to the other thing we've talked about is the WIPs, the watershed implementation plans. These are the local plans that that are basically the prescription of how we're going to address these problems. I don't know what our WIP estimate, but it was around 685 million or 800 million, an estimate. That's a lot of money in order for us to put all of these BMPs, these best management practices, things like buffers or other kind of things, putting them in place in order to clean the bay, or do our part to clean the bay. And as far as as far as BMPs go, I definitely think that any kind of best management practice needs to be verifiable. It needs to be something that can easily be approved and be shared. We need to have more approvals of more types of systems and things that can be put in place in order to clean the bay. And as far as the Clean Chesapeake Coalition, I don't know how much it was, 225,000 or so. I probably would not. I would lean towards not supporting them. Only because I don't want to use our tax. I'd rather put that money into BMPs, and I'd rather use that money. I'd rather go through the current systems that we have, and I don't believe that the current coalition is bay-wide, is watershed-wide, which is what we would need.
Joe Holloway.
Well, as everybody else at this table who's spoken so far about the WIP program, they're all correct. It's going to cost a lot of money, so we've got to be really innovative when it comes to how we apply those different programs. The Clean Chesapeake Coalition is an interesting process that we went through on the county council. I crossed the bridge after that storm that created that plume that flowed down the bay. I wished I could have stopped that day, and the traffic was too heavy, and taken some pictures of it. It was unbelievable. I mean, everything from 2x4s to trash cans to looked like diapers and towels floating in the bay that had flushed out, I guess, of the Susquehanna part of it and moved down the bay. So when that came along, the coalition was formed. I think Dorchester County is the one that started it. I was very interested in joining because I'd seen where this problem was coming from. But what disappointed me the most was the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and other environmental groups advocating for us not to join. And I would have thought, hey, look, there's another group here that's trying to do something right. Let's work with them. Let's find out what these folks know. I mean, the main goal is to clean up the bay. But there was a lot of pressure put on this county council, and I think the ones that's sitting here up here with me tonight will agree. There was a lot of pressure put on us not to join that coalition. And that coalition, from what I've seen and everything I've read, has done real well to find out information. Thank you.
Bob Culver.
The sad part of it is that we had to join the coalition. The coalition is nothing more than 10 counties paying a law firm $25,000 a year to fight regulatory agencies that don't have the common sense to sit and listen and look at the plats of what's actually going on. It's not something that a lot of us wanted to do, but it was something that we had to do out of survival, or we were going to be facing a $700 million tab, and so we've joined it. As far as meeting that tab, there's ways that we can do it. Talbot County has met a large portion of their WIP program by planting sawback grasses within their ditches. That filters the water naturally as it goes towards the tributaries, towards all the creeks and ditches. So we can do that. We can do this for a whole lot less than $700 million. But we've got to have to be proactive. We've got to come out and say, all right, did this work here? We're learning now from other counties. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's learn what the other counties have done. And this will tie into the folks that we have in Wycomico County. There's groups are here right now tonight that would be glad to help us plant sawback grasses, or the types of grasses that will filter the water and do our part to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. Thank you.
Just by the way, I want to remind everybody in the audience that if you have a question, certainly write it down and give it to one of our folks who are roaming the hallways there, the aisles. I want to go to land use, and there's been a lot of discussion about development, curbing development. In recent years, there's been an effort to curb cluster developments in non-urban areas. What kind of commitment do you have to local zoning and tiered growth, to the preservation of rural areas and also reducing sprawl? And we want to go with John Cannon.
Thank you. I found that the establishment of the tier map and the 7 parcels per, or 7 units per parcel, I was very shocked when I heard about that. I mean, most of you in the room have to remember back in 2008 when the county was making these, was at least had the opportunity to make these decisions. I mean, that's why we're all up here today, to be elected officials and to represent you, because we want to represent you. We want your voice heard through what decisions we make. I was shocked that the state of Maryland came down, and here we were arguing about 1 and 3 and 1 and 15. And all of a sudden now they're saying, oh, guess what? You got 7 parcels, or 7 units per parcel. It's a somewhat arbitrary figure, in my opinion. And they don't take into account, as far as I say, they don't take into account what impact that might have on the farmers who are, who need that property in order to survive. It's their livelihood. It's their retirement. So I was very much surprised by that. As the tier map has developed, there are the 4 different areas: tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 municipalities, the designated growth area. Tier 3 is a little bit, I guess, in the smaller towns, and tier 4 is in the agriculture district where they absolutely want no growth. We have to try to find some leeway in tier 2 and tier 3, without a question. I'm hoping that with the new administration in Maryland, the state may give us a little more leeway and make it fair for everyone, because right now I would not say it's fair. Thank you.
Matt Holloway.
Sure. Land use was actually the reason I got into politics back in 2008, 2009, when John was sitting on the council. Myself and a bunch of other farmers got in our tractors and did a tractorcade around the government office building. John was out there, I believe, watching us while we were doing that. And that was my first foray into politics. We were upset by what was going to happen. We were afraid for our values of our land, and we were afraid that downzoning was going to affect us. So here I ran for the office, stood up for property rights, and the state came and downzoned for us, took it out of our hands. I'm a big believer in local rights, local jurisdiction when it comes to zoning and development. And I've always been a big supporter of high density, low impact development. As a farmer on 100 acres, I would rather see a small percentage of that developed at high density and leave more acreage available for actual agriculture to take place. I'm not interested in just open space. That's not agriculture. That's not a business. I've always been a fan of increasing the density on minimal acreage and leave more acres available for agriculture to take place. So I think we can work with the state. I don't think we have to butt heads all the time, but I think we can work together to come up with some kind of compromise. Thanks.
Laura Mitchell.
Thank you. One of the things that I think about are, why are farmers looking to sell the property? What is it that is driving them to do that? A lot of times they don't really want to. They're being forced to, because it's very costly to, and it's really hard work to run a farm. And oftentimes we're not seeing the younger family members or moving up into wanting to run those farms. We're not seeing that succession planning. So I think it's a multi-tiered approach where you're helping to spark that interest of younger people that want to continue in the farming tradition, and finding ways to make farming more profitable so that they want to keep that. I mean, they feed us. We need them. But a lot of what's grown locally is sold outside of the area, greens and feed and that kind of thing. There are programs like Sustainable Tables, where you can basically on a micro basis grow what you need to feed the population in your area. And I think that would be very beneficial in a way to approach this, to help cut down on farmers looking to develop. Sprawl is expensive. Every time we annex more property in, we have to send our police and our fire and everybody else a little further out. And we all end up paying for that through our tax dollars. So We got to find that balance where we can encourage our farmers to stay in the business and keep feeding us, because I, for one, like to eat, and not damage our environment while we're doing it.
Mark Kilmer.
Well, my approach to curbing sprawl would be to make sure that our farmers in Wycomico County can stay profitable. My grandfather was a farmer. He didn't make a lot of money farming. He was, I guess, like Matt, in a way that he had to have another job or two in order to be able to feed his family. He would have made more money selling his farmland for development or for something else, but he had a tie to that land, and as long as he could make some sort of a living at it, he kept that land as farmland. And I think that there are a lot of farmers in this county who, even though they can make more money selling their land, desire to keep the land. I mean, you know, some of this land has been in the family for generations. You know, Bland Harcum can trace his, farmland back, his family farmland back to, the 1600s. And so, to make sure that farmers can stay profitable is what I think should be our strategy for curbing sprawl. I don't believe in taking away farmers' property rights in order to curb sprawl. I believe in keeping farming profitable. And unfortunately, we have some legislation from across the bay that doesn't recognize the importance of farming. And we need to work with some of the people who are running for office at the state level to make sure that that doesn't happen and that farming remains the #1 industry in Wycomico County.
Kirby Travers.
Thank you. The family farm of Wycomico County, the profitability is what's going to keep the farming in operation. And I'm a true believer that a man or woman's land is his and should be able to do what he so deems necessary. And the folks across in Annapolis may not see it like that. But the reason the family farm is failing is because if I, as a child of a farmer, if it's not profitable, there's no need for me to go in that business. And then once my parents or grandparents get to the point where they can't do anything, they're forced to get rid of land for reasons that don't suit them. You should be able to just do what you want with your own land. The government, I just have a real problem with the government involved with people's land. Thank you.
Larry Dodd.
Yes, thank you. Farming is a way of life in Wycomico County, and it has been for many years, way before I got here, and it'll probably be that way when I'm gone. Hopefully it'll still be that way when my kids and their kids are around. You can ride all the back roads that you want, and you see a lot of farmland. You see a lot of farmers. It's a way of life. People are not making a big living on that. They're not making the best living. They're not getting rich. There are a lot of groups out there that are trying to make the farmers keep their farmland and not sell, not develop. We have to protect the farmers. We have to protect the farmland. We have to protect the environment. But we have to do that without affecting a man's way of life. There are a lot of people out there that believe that their farmland is their land and that's their retirement. If it's in the watershed, if it's marshland, that's a different story. But if it's land that's close to the metro core, which was something that was implemented a long time ago to build close to the city of Salisbury, you probably should be able to develop. I don't have a problem with that. I wouldn't mind seeing parts of the city of Salisbury be redeveloped because there are some parts of the city that aren't very desirable. Mixed use might be a good idea. The downtown plaza is a good idea. Mixed use there, get more people to live on the plaza. May not happen in my lifetime, but people are going to continue to work on that. The city council, some members of the city council are proactive for that. And I agree with that. I do like riding the back roads, but I really hate riding down Route 13 because the traffic is congested. So I would like to see us develop some outside the metro core area. Thank you.
Josh Hastings.
First of all, if you go down to where I grew up in Athol, you can see a lot of where development took place. A lot of the area along Athol Road is no longer farmland, and I don't, it's kind of sad to see. But farmers don't want that to happen. That's what happens when they don't make enough money, and they can't afford it anymore. Generally, farmers, you're land rich but cash poor. So clearly, your land's your bigger investment. Obviously, most farmers, you want to be able to turn it over to people who are other farmers. Generally, I like to see things, more programs like, like a mouth certification. I think we lost our mouth certification, which, if you don't know what that stands for, it's the Maryland Agricultural Land Preservation Foundation. What that means is we decided as a county that we did not want to make our rural areas be rural. We wanted them open for development. I say that a little strenuously, but basically, we did not put in the protections in place so that they wouldn't be protected. If you're Purdue or your other company, you want to look at Wycomico County. Do I want to do business in a place that does not cherish its rural areas? Right now, as it is, it doesn't look like we do. So we need to fix that. As a whole, I agree with Mark said. If you're we want to be able to make sure that the farming is profitable, and I certainly agree with what Mr. Dodd said also. You want that. I want to see transfer of development rights. I want to see more mixed use. I want to see more development downtown. We need stronger urban core. That's what takes the pressure off of ag land.
Joe Holloway.
Back in the late 80s, I was in my country store one day, and this farmer came in, and we were talking, and he'd sold some lots along a road just east of Pittsville, and we were talking about it. He said, Joe, I really didn't want to sell those lots. He said, but I'm going to tell you something. If I hadn't have sold those lots, I wouldn't have been farming today. He said, we'd have gone belly up. He said, things were that bad. His farmers went through some bad years. So there's a farmer that didn't want to sell land, but he had that in reserve. He was able to do that to save his farm. Today, that farm is thriving, and his sons are involved in the business with him and the rest of his family. So, that's their security. That's their little insurance policy of staying in business. I've heard from a lot of people that, we're losing farmland to development. And we've lost a little farmland to development. I don't know how much we've lost, but I'm going to tell you what we are going to lose. Just across the road from where I live, there's 700 acres of land, 350 of it, which is some of the richest farmland in Wycomico County. Now, the parents died, and there's 5 kids, and none of them were interested in farming, so that land's been sold. That 350 acres has been sold to the Nature Conservatory. They're going to let that 350 acres grow up in trees. Now, I'm glad it's going up in trees rather than homes. But there's 350 acres of farmland we're losing just like that. So I don't think that you're going to see a lot more anytime soon of big developments going in Wycomico County. But I really hate to see that 350 acres disappear like it's doing. I'd rather see it farmed. Thank you.
Bob Culver.
Tier map. I'm against a tier map. Several reasons why. Wycomico County consists of roughly 180,000 acres. Of that 180,000 acres, 13% of our land is already developed into municipalities and set aside in like the Rural Legacy Program, different mouth programs, as they've mentioned. We only have 16% of Wycomico County that can even be developed due to the health department regulations of perk tests, the number of lots we can put on a piece of property. We only have 16%. That leaves us 3% of our land. Now, if we pass the tier map with other than lands we've already preserved, we have cut off our own throat. We're not going to grow. If a county does not grow, we're just going to die on the vine here. We need to grow. Have we made mistakes in other subdivisions? Yes. There are 2 or 3 subdivisions in Wycomico County. If we had to go re-perk them today or test them today, they wouldn't pass. We all know that. Some of them are the most high-dollar neighborhoods in the county, but they would not pass. So I want to see us do it and do it well, but at the same time, make sure we're not cutting somebody's rights. Farmland is those people's 401ks, just like you may have through your work. Farmland is what they've invested in. And actually, Rick's administration earlier on, back in 2008, 2009, tried to downzone the property, and John's council at that time voted it down. Now we've got it back again because if we don't accept the tier maps, the state has forced us to only develop 7 lots per parcel, and that means a farm like the Holt Farm can only have 7 houses per 1,000 acres. Thank you.
Rick Pollitt.
Just a real quick correction, our administration did not try to downzone. Everything that we were doing in that time was in collaboration with the county council, but I'm not going to take my time for that. Government does not exist to lower people's property values. Government cannot be allowed to lower people's property values. What we invest in our land, what we invest in our property is ours. We do have obligations as stewards of the environment. We do have to abide by local zoning laws. They should be local. But I'm naive enough to believe that we can have sound environmental policy that does not lower property values. Just this time a year ago, we hosted, at my initiative, a roundtable over in the Midway Room right here, where we brought knowledgeable stakeholders from every element of the community that has a stake in this conversation. There were realtors, there were property appraisers, there were bankers, there were farmers, there were environmentalists, there were average citizens. There were people who loved our community, loved the environment, and thought that we could find a balance where we can be responsible and not lower our property values. The tier map is an outline with 4 different categories. The 4th category is the one that's designed not to promote development. If the goal is not to pollute our groundwater, not to pollute the bay, one size fits all doesn't necessarily work. There could be areas in that tier 4 whereby the soils would support a certain amount of development, a certain amount of septic use that would not turn out to be a pollutant or an environmental hazard. We've got to find balance, and that's what it's all about, but we have to have balance. We can't be challenging people's properties.
And again, I want to encourage anybody who has any questions that they want to write down and hand to our folks who are organizing this. Finally, go to energy and climate, sort of a twin subject matter. We know that there is a great deal of effort, for instance, to deal with clean energy in Somerset County. There's a wind farm proposal that's perhaps a project that might be completed. In terms of climate change, we've seen certainly Hurricane Sandy and, of course, rising sea levels. A number of local governments that I've talked to are concerned about that. So what would you do to address those twin issues of developing clean energy and dealing with the effect of climate change? And I'd like each candidate to begin with whether or not they believe that climate change is actually occurring, that is, that warming is actually occurring. And I want to start with Matt Holloway.
I absolutely believe that climate change is occurring. Whether it's, I think the science is arguable on both sides, whether it's a natural occurrence or man-made occurrence. But we're doing our part, and it's a perfect time for this question, Don, because we just recently, at our last meeting, signed a lease with Solar City to have 2 locations in the county where we have solar installations going in that are actually going to provide 30-some% of the energy that our county uses in our facilities are going to be solar powered now. It's actually going to save the taxpayers about $150,000 per year locked in for the next 20 years. Our rate, instead of 9 cents per kilowatt hour, is going to be 4.5 cents. So I think we're making great strides, and we believe in green energy. We've taken the initiative to do this. I thank Rick and I thank Lee Beecham for what they did to set this up. And it's a first step, because what we did was we approved the contract, which then also allows the city of Salisbury, Warwick, and the Board of Ed to piggyback off that contract. So now they can all save money, put in solar installations, and save taxpayers more money. So it's a great thing that we're moving in the right direction.
Laura Mitchell.
I also believe that climate change is real. It's happening. We see the effects of it. We see the evidence of it. I don't think it's either or man-made or natural. I think it's both. In terms of clean energy, I serve on the Airport Commission as a City Council representative to the Airport Commission. We've been looking at solar for a while. It's a little bit different there because you have to worry about the reflections from the panels and the placement not interfering with air traffic. We'll be able to piggyback on the county's contract as well. The city is looking at it for a wastewater treatment plant. We're looking at it for a lot of different options, as many as we can. There have been some recent changes that will allow us to, it's called net metering, which means that we can collect the sunshine. We're having a solar shower, and spread that out among our facilities that need the power. We don't have to just use it on site as we had to previously. So that's making the market much more attractive. wind, we're going to get some wind in the southern portion down in Crisfield area, hopefully. I think that we have to look at these alternative options, not only because it's cleaner and greener, but because it's more cost effective. And if we constantly have to do more and more with less and less, we have to look for the ways to do that. And this is one of those opportunities that we can't afford to miss.
Mark Hilmer.
Yeah, I too will say I think that the solar energy at the landfill there is a good idea. I know that Lower Shore Enterprises did something similar in about the same location about a year ago, and I've talked with Louis Luna when he was CEO there and said it was a great project. So I hope that the county can have the same good results that Lower Shore and some of the other places have had with something similar. I also think that looking for ways to reduce the county's energy usage is important for environmental reasons, but also for fiscal reasons. If we can have, county vehicles drive less, that both helps the environment and helps our pocketbook. And just looking at, little things in the county. For instance, my daughter goes to Pemberton Elementary. And what happens there is they bus the kids from the housing complex there on Pemberton, I think Pemberton Manor, to Pemberton Elementary, when it's literally in the backyard of the elementary school. Why are we putting, kids on a bus to bus them much farther than they could walk? I mean, things like that, we need to look at doing more efficient things in our county that will have an environmental impact and also save us money. But in terms of looking at places where we can have clean energy and more solar power on county government buildings, and I know the county, I think, did an energy efficiency study for county buildings. I think that's definitely a good thing to do.
Kirby Travers.
I am also in agreement with the solar and wind power. I think the major problem is there's probably not anybody in here that would disagree that they are great ideas. The problem is who wants the solar farm or the wind turbines as their neighbor. So I think that's the huge issue in reference to that. But I certainly would like to go down the path of trying to make it happen in the county. Just as a side note, just Monday afternoon, I actually had Paradise come out and do a survey on my home. I'm hoping to have solar by at least the first of the year. So I'm very into the green energy.
Kirby, just follow up with that, because you have a moment. Do you believe in climate change? One of the things I asked at the...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, climate change, yeah.
Yeah, I believe the climate is changing. I think there's scientific proof that it's changing. But we still have mild summers and mild winters, so, but it is changing.
Larry Dodd?
Yes, sir. Climate change, do I believe in that? I don't want to call myself a scientist because I didn't work in that background, but I have a strong science background. But anybody that is familiar with research knows that a lot of scientists do research, and a lot of their research is formulated opinion, and then somebody comes behind them and they change that. So I've got mixed emotions on the climate change. Sometimes I see that in research that I do and a lot of reading that I do. I can go either way on that, so I can't give you a straight answer on that. But as far as developing clean energy, is it feasible? Can we afford it? I'm all for saving the tax dollars. Can we, as a government, afford to buy these wind turbines? Can we afford to buy solar panels? I'd love to see every house have solar panels. I would do it myself. I know there's grant funding out there for it. But yeah, I have to look at the flip side with that too. I had a lot of concern, but I did support the Solar City with the Board of Education. I am on the Board of Education, and we supported that. We're piggybacking with the county, and I think that's a good idea. We opted to give up some land on one of our school grounds, and it is a good idea. I had some concerns with safety. It is going to be monitored. There's going to be a fence around it. So yes, that's going to be a good idea, and we are locked into that cheap rate, 4.5 cents. I would like to have that rate at my house, and I would put solar panels on my house if I could afford it. Right now, I don't think that's feasible, but yes, I do support cleaner energy. Thank you.
Josh Hastings.
As far as climate change, of course, it is happening, and if It could be cyclical. It happened when the dinosaurs were around. We've had ice ages before. Climate change happens. How much of it is actually occurring by human activity? Well, probably a lot, considering the amount of pollution that we put into the air every year. But nonetheless, it is happening, and we have to adapt to it. As far as clean energy, I think it was a great job what the county has done, Lee Beecham and others did, with trying to save our tax dollars by putting in solar in the areas where we can. The liability is not on us, it's on Solar City or other organizations. So the more that we can do that, that's free money as far as I'm concerned. As far as the wind, with poor Crisfield, you see what they have to go through. There's not too much happening in Crisfield, and God bless them. I want to see wind. I want to see wind happen there, and I want to see offshore wind happen. As far as wind, the wind turbines, those are massive structures. Then there needs to be some real talk about size and scope, and all that goes along with that. I also support hydrokinetics. I will gladly love to see tidal energy. I want to see any kind of energy that we can continue to bring up, because when I graduated high school 14 and a half years ago, there were 6 billion people on the earth. Now there's 7 billion. And it's going to quickly continue. So we need to have energy that goes long term. So I embrace any kind of energy efficiency, any kind of new technology, bring it on. So.
Joe Holloway.
As far as climate change, I think science proves that we are seeing some changes, but I believe more in climate cycles. We had one of the mildest summers we've had in years. We had one of the colder winters we had last winter. So I believe more in climate cycles than I really do climate change. Green energy, nobody can disagree with green energy. I don't think they can. I can't. How it's used and what it costs is a different matter. We had the 2 solar fields came in front of us the last meeting. I voted against the first one due to the location. There was some concern from neighbors. Again, you're looking at property rights, and people's rights are that they want to look at that every day when they drive down the road. The one at the landfill, I voted for. But the interesting thing about it, and the questions I had about it, was, this 20-year guarantee. The company that put in the solar panels at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore gave a guarantee too, but now they're bankrupt. These companies survive off federal subsidies. So we have to look forward to that. Are we going to be able to assume those responsibilities later on? Are the guarantees going to stand? That's something we have to be really careful with. Thank you.
Bob Culver.
Yes, climate change. When I was young, we used to have a lot of snow, went through 20 years with no snow. Now we're starting to have snow again in 2010. I guess I kind of more believe in the cyclical climate than I do the actual changing. Green energy. Somewhat like Joe just said, I have no problem with green energy and enjoy it. I think anybody has a right to put it on their house, whether it be a windmill, whether it be a solar panel. I have concerns with strapping a community such as Wycomico County with a 20-year lease, and we don't know what is going to happen if something does happen to that company. We still have a lot of ambiguities within the contract. We don't know. Is it going to be something that the county taxpayers come back on? We're not sure. Because once these tax credits are used up, it's going to be our responsibility, and we're going to have to live with it. So to saddle a community with 20-year lease, which is our kids in all basically. I mean, Josh has only been out of school 14 years. That sounds nice, doesn't it, Rick? Just 14 years. But the same problem is we're going to have to live with it a lot longer than what he's been out of school with right now. So I do believe that it's a great way of starting to save energy. I believe it's a great way of conservation, but I just don't know if I want to saddle a community and my children with it, something that we're not sure enough in the long range.
Rick Paulette.
Like everyone else, of course, the climate's changing. Whether it's a matter of cyclical natural processes or man-made, the fact that there is man-made pollution occurring. And we have an obligation to do what we can to better improve that part of it which we can control. And I think the idea of clean energy is one whose time has come, and there's never been a more exciting time to embrace the concept of clean energy. With the technology advancing the way it is these days, it's hard to just keep up from one day to the next what is going to be out there and available to us. And so we look at how we can use science to capture the sun's energy, how we can capture the wind energy in a way that is conducive to country living without spoiling the landscape and without devaluing properties. We're looking at another thing many of you have heard about, the gasification of our landfill, of our trash. What an idea to take our trash that all of us generate each and every day and turn it into energy. We're looking into that. There's been some concern about the process and the science behind it, and we haven't committed ourselves to anything other than doing our due diligence to see what the potential there is. But we're being told that properly managed, properly designed, properly run, we can not only turn all of our trash into energy, we can go back into the landfills, mine that trash, and turn it into energy. We're already producing electricity from the landfill in Wicomico County, and that's the kind of thing we need to keep doing and taking advantage of technology advances to see how we can move to a cleaner, greener energy consumption for all citizens, and that will have an impact on our planet and our quality of life.
John Cannon.
Thank you. I do believe in climate change. I think it is happening again, whether it's man-made, whether it's cyclical. I wouldn't say specifically. Clean energy, I think it's exciting. Solar energy, wind energy. The one thing, I have said more recently here, I want to back up for a second. I do plan to get an electric car on my next car. Now my son says, by the time I buy a new car, it's going to be nuclear, Dad. But clean energy, I think, is exciting. The question is, how sustainable is it? Joe touched on that. It costs about 28 cents a kilowatt for wind energy, offshore wind energy, as opposed to the standard 4 cents a kilowatt for standard electricity. The subsidies for solar and wind energy are about 15 times what they are for standard energy. Where is it coming from? You have to understand, how sustainable is it? Will eventually the federal government, and I'm assuming those are the subsidies that are coming from the federal government, eventually they may find that they can't continue that. In Denmark, they had offshore wind energy, and it got their government, the representatives got in a lot of hot water because of the amount of money that it was costing them. So I'm all for it. I just want to hope, I hope that it is sustainable. I'd also really hope that they would take these subsidies, maybe they should apply them to septic systems or wastewater treatment plants in Wicomico County. That's going to get us out of that bind. Chesapeake Bay, it's for the state, it's for the entire country. I'd love to see those subsidies coming to help us with septic systems and wastewater treatment plants so we can solve that problem. Thank you.
I want to turn to some of the questions. I got a lot of them here. We'll try to get to at least a number of them. First question, we all know that you want to boost our local economy, but in the efforts to reduce urban sprawl, how can we promote more central living, I assuming, in urban areas? And I want to start with Laura Mitchell.
Thank you. One of the things that I struggle with is we want to promote infill. We want to fill in the empty spots, sort of like defragging your computer. Pull everything down, put it back up nice and orderly. We want to do that, but then we have policies that work against us for that. We have the USDA that will give you assistance with your down payment if you're in the county. We have too high a population in the city, so we don't have that. We have interest rates that fluctuate based on where you get your loans. We have oh gosh, I lost my train of thought, I'm sorry. We have a number of policies that keep us from doing that. Double taxation is another one. You're going to pay county and city tax if you're within the city, where if you build out in the county, just outside the city, you get a lot of the benefits of proximity without paying the double tax. So we have to look at those things and equalize those if we really want to encourage growth in our city rather than outside.
Mark Kilmer.
Well, when my wife and I were looking to buy a house, we were renting a place in the city, right in Newtown, and we decided to buy a place out in the county. And it was for a lot of the reasons that Laura just described. I mean, we didn't want to essentially double our taxes and have less land. And frankly, by living where we do, we can drive 10 minutes and be in town. And I mean, even the furthest reaches in Wicomico County, you can still live in the country and enjoy, the amenities of the city. And if you want to make the city attractive, you do have to reduce some of the disadvantages that come with that, like the high tax rate. like the crime that you experience in the city that you don't necessarily experience in the country, although unfortunately we've seen in Allen and in other areas it's kind of reaching out that way. But that is what I think we need to do. We need to work with the city of Salisbury to make sure that it's attractive for people that want to live there.
Kirby Travers.
And I would agree with everyone. To get people to move into a high-density neighborhood, I believe the cost to live there has to be much lower than anywhere else. I don't believe that most folks like to be really tight-knit together. It may be split. I mean, me personally, I like being out in the country. I don't like neighbors. There's probably a lot of folks that don't like neighbors. So to increase density, I believe you're going to have some kind of incentive, which ultimately comes down to some type of lower dollar amount to get them to live there. I'm not sure how you make that work, but it all comes down to a dollar.
Larry Dodd.
Yes, what will we do to boost central living? When I think of that, I think of what we mentioned earlier, the downtown plaza. And I also think of, I think it's called Siegel Square, where the college is using it now, where they have the dormitory, the residential space above the stores. It's a beautiful place. It looks like a miniature version of a big city. What you have to do, you have to make it attractive. Right now the economy is so bad, I don't know what to do to make it attractive. One thing that was already mentioned, you have to consider the tax differential. Why do you want to come in the city and pay 2 taxes? I'm living in the city right now and I'm paying double taxes. I didn't mind it in the beginning, but now with the economy the way it is, I think we need to consider that. But that's going to be a hard pill to swallow for some people. The crime rate is bad. Some people tell you the crime is down. Ask my little boy who lost his bicycle recently. I see the crime rate, I see it all over the county. In some of the municipalities it's a lot higher, but you do have to make central living attractive. So, thank you.
Josh Hastings.
First of all, I remember when, it wasn't that long ago, when you're going North 13 and all of the car dealerships, that was the end of all of the development. It's interesting to look at the history, and especially see the downtown as it is now. You know, when the downtown that we know, when it died, that was when eventually when the old mall, when that was put in place. When the old mall was, older, eventually we put in a new mall, and of course all of the growth and development there died. So it's all about how you move it around. Generally, I mentioned before, transfer development rights are another great tool. Right now, recently the state put in an IRR policy, it's infill redevelopment and revitalization policy, which is basically now the state's monies towards how it's going to continue to grow. We've got a lot of old buildings that we no longer can fit into, so we need to have extra money in order to move into them. But other things are important, like sidewalks that actually go somewhere. It'd be nice to have them connected. We need to kill all urban parking lots and all parking meters, I should say, because there's no reason why we. Oh darn it, I'm out of time. There's lots of other efforts there. And
all right, Joe.
yeah,
Joe
I got a
Holloway?
0.
Okay,
Is it 0?
You got enough? Okay, okay.
I'm done.
I'm sorry. You done? All right, Joe.
I think it's a matter of choice. You've got people that want to live in town. You've got people who want to live in the country. If they said I could live in Salisbury or one of the Delmar, and I'm not putting down Salisbury or any other town, with no taxes, I'd still live in Parsonsburg. I live in the middle of 40 acres with woods all around me. I'm not moving to town. They're going to have to drag me, in there to get me to move to town. So I think a lot of it's a matter of choice. The other thing is the culture of Wicomico County. A few years ago, I think Mr. Pruddle was there. We were at Warwick one night talking about, the development and things like that. And I said, look, we've got Purdue. We've got people that work at Purdue. The majority of the people that work at Purdue, have a tendency to want to live in the country. Most of the guys there, they hunt and they fish, and they want to live in. So I think it depends a little bit on your industry. We're not a high tech industry. More of your high tech industries, I think more people would want to live in the cities, I believe. But I think it's a matter of choice. I think that's it. Certainly, you can make the towns more desirable to live in by lower taxes or lower crime and other things. But I still think it's a matter of choice. Thank you.
Bob Culver.
We have that now. We have what's called the Metro Core. We can keep our development focused into an area around an urban area and do just fine with it. What we need to do is to offer developers certain kind of tax advantages to stay within that metro core, so there won't be the urban sprawl. As he says, it's all about the money. Each and every one of us work every day for a living, and developers are no different. But if we offer some type of incentive to keep them in that certain area of a metro core, we'll see our development taking place in there. But at the same time, look longer range. The county needs to look at going in with a central sewer system. With the things that are being passed down from the state, from the national levels, there's no reason that the Wycomico County and the city of Salisbury cannot share a septic system and start working on that together, because it's going to happen in the years to come. So we may have ours go out as far as Nistdale or areas like that and get those houses off of the tanks. But we've got to sit down and have that collaboration between the two governments.
Rick Pollitt.
This is not a good question for me. I'm sitting here getting the shakes because I find myself agreeing so wholeheartedly with Joe Holloway. And I'm not sure I've said that in the 8 years we've served together in county government. You know, I live in Allen. I can't imagine living in town. And there are country mice and there are city mice. And it is a matter of choice. What we need to do is to be able to develop a community where people actually have a choice as to where they live, as to what appeals to their lifestyle. If the idea is to encourage more development in concentrated areas, then you have to make them want to be there. You have to give them a reason to go there. You have to give it a vibrancy, a quality of life that makes that attractive to different people. I'm so old now, I like my country. I like my countryside, and that's where I'm going to stay. I do also agree with Bob Culver in here. One of the things we've been promoting from the beginning is to try to look into regionalization of water and sewer. Right now, the municipalities are the only ones in Wycomico County that provide that service. We need to branch out and see how we can manage that across the board.
John Cannon.
Thank you. I think that it's very simple. People want to live where they want to live. If you want to live in the country, I don't think you want to live in the city. You know, I was always dumbfounded back in 2008 when the state started passing down what they said, smart growth. Here it comes, people, it's smart growth. And they were dictating to the counties exactly what needed to be done, and that you know, you had to have people moving out of the country into the city, into the designated growth areas. I thought, well, okay, I can understand that. But what they failed to really realize that smart growth was making the municipalities able to sustain that growth. Has anybody ever been down Route 13 lately? It's not the greatest road to be in. It's not the greatest looking road to be on. And I really think, you know, let's work from the inside out. Why force people to go from the county to the city? Why don't you do something with the municipality? And I know I'm a county representative here, or trying to be, but why don't you help the municipalities so that the people in the county might want to come to the city instead of forcing it on anybody? Thank you.
And Matt Holloway.
So this is going to sound very repetitive here, but you know, Joe Holloway's correct. Zoning is not a one-size-fits-all. What we can do is to try to make infill more attractive to people. Salisbury's doing a great job of this. Salisbury City Council and the mayor is. Also, I'm a agricultural representative on the Sustainable Growth Commission, and we just produced the IRR program that Josh was speaking of, the Infill Revitalization and Redevelopment Program. That's a program that will incentivize and encourage people to move downtown, not force them to move downtown. The county can also help through boosting the ag preservation programs. I've always been a big fan of the carrot, not the stick. I would rather incentivize and pay people for their land development rights rather than take them away from them. If you pay for their development rights, that's going to naturally force people into the municipalities.
Next question, I'll try to sort of combine a couple of things. Deals with growth. So Wycomico County has grown a lot in the last 20 years, yet our county is still in economic bad shape. What would you do to further growth? And to piggyback onto that, and something that somebody mentioned, another one was the possibility of creating, for instance, a county sewer system, as opposed to remove, as it were, the individual septic systems. I want to sort of combine that, because if you have growth outside, particularly the cities, you really are outside of city city and sewer and water. So how would you do that? Mark Kilmer.
I think it's a great idea to look at a county-wide sewer system. I understand that's being studied now, and I look forward to seeing what the results are. It makes sense, and as someone who lives outside the city on septic, I live in fear that the septic system goes out and I'm saddled with a huge bill. So I think it might be nice for some of the folks who do live, just on the outskirts of the city to have that option. And I think that if that happens, that will very much help development in, I guess, what would be tier 2 on the tier development map, which is kind of right around the urban core. And so that's something that it obviously will require a lot of cooperation between the city and the county, and between municipalities like Sharptown that also have their own systems. So I would encourage that, in terms of growing our economy. I think it's important to grow our economy, but it's also important to preserve the jobs we have, which goes back to preserving our agricultural base. But I guess my time is up. So.
Kirby Travers.
I also believe that a central sewer system and central water system would be a great thing if we could get to the point where you could afford it. I can remember back as a kid in Hebron when the wastewater treatment plant came online, everybody was, my parents in particular, were in fear of, oh my gosh, we're going to now have to pay something every month, and how we're going to handle that. But years later, it's just a normal expense and not a huge one for the folks. So, I would be in agreement to look into those avenues as long as the costs are within reach.
Larry Dodd.
Yes, I think the initial question was what would we do to further growth?
Further growth, and you obviously have the issue of what do you do with sewage issue?
Right. Well, further in growth, there's a lot of people that don't want more people moving to our area. And the ones that don't want it, they want them to move into the metro core area. But there's a lot of people that say growth pays for growth, and growth does not pay for growth. You have water and sewer issues that you have to worry about. You have police, you have fire, you have EMS. There's a lot of issues to be concerned with, so it doesn't pay for itself. I've always been an advocate of water and sewer, countywide water and sewer. It's been one of my campaign positions. I was on the county council from 2002 to 2006, and I introduced the discussion at that time. And what I heard was, no, we can't do it. We can't afford it. It can't be done. And that's one thing, if I get elected, I don't want to hear, is that we can't do it. It can be done. We have to find a way. If Somerset County can do it and Dorchester County can do it, we can do it. I think countywide water and sewer will probably help jumpstart the economy, start building these houses. There are people that don't want to live in the city, so if they live outside and they get water and sewer, I think that will help development. Thank you.
Josh Hastings.
I guess as far as the question on growth, that's always a real question: is what kind of growth do we want? And my friend of mine, who basically she just moved here from Rockville, moved here. I guess she went to Salisbury University, but she ended up she's 24 now, and this year she bought her house. She bought it next to the park. When we started talking about growing, I said, a lot of people in Wycomico are very concerned about growing. We want to have more people here. She goes, I don't want more people here. She goes, I left that so that I don't have to have that here. So the quality of growth is very important. And as I said, she bought her home next to the park because that's where she wants to be. That's the vitality she wants to see. As far as the septic hookups, that's part of the WIP program, so that actually is a positive thing. As long as you're not expending the trunk line, you're extending more the sewer hookup into the area that's not your growth area. You want to continue to promote a more stronger urban core, and I'd really like to see us continue to grow up and not out. I don't want to cover up our farmland with houses.
Joe Holloway.
So after your friend got here, she didn't want anybody else to move here, huh? Anyway, growth is a tough one. A lot of our economy was based on building new houses, and that dried up during the recession. So that's a tough one. You've got to have that balancing act. The water and sewer thing. Back in our first council, John, you'll recall this. We had a developer that wanted to put in a private sewer system for a development, and we approached that defensively. We did not want the citizens of Wicomico County to be saddled with a system that possibly wouldn't work after a period of time. So we demanded an escrow to guarantee that. And of course, the company that was going to put it in, they didn't want to do that. I think we need to start small, move out. We've got a situation out on Ocean City Road. If you look at that corridor from where the old Lowe's was down toward Parker Road and well past Parker Road really, that at some point in time is going to have sewer system because the state will probably condemn it. But I guess if the state condemns it, maybe they'll come up with the funding for us to take care of it, hopefully. But there's a lot of problems in that area right now with septic systems. Thank you.
Bob Culver.
I'm tickled. Everybody likes my idea of putting sewage out in the county. So, you know, we do need to continue on with that. As far as the growth, I don't think we're going to, I'm not in favor of putting sewage over the whole entire county. I think we need to come up with what I would call, like we have now, the Metro Core, work within that focus, and still keep some houses in the residential rural communities. There's been so much science done on soils and soil types since we originally started putting in septic tanks. Let's learn from that. You know, why go ahead and try to build something with an area that's not going to be doing it? But we need to continue our building. We need to continue our planning ahead for the future because we're going to get over 100,000 people, and if we can't get rid of this rain tax for the O'Malley administration, we're going to be suffering with that too. So we have got to prepare ourselves for the future and the growth of Wicomico County because that's what's going to keep us alive.
Rick Mullett.
I think this one question goes to the root of everything that's come up tonight, and this is probably the core issue of our day, and that is, how do we grow responsibly in a way that does not threaten our environment? And it's about finding that balance. You know, we talk about people's choices, that they should be able to live where they want to live, but then we've got a responsibility that we not pollute the groundwater, that we not overcrowd ourselves. We want to, you know, we have a plan, we have a comprehensive plan. We have subdivision regulations and a zoning ordinance to implement that plan. We do have to have a framework that can be adjusted to need, to certain circumstances. It has to be flexible enough that it can be a living guide of how we're going to develop as a county, but we can't lose sight of the fact that we do have a responsibility to protect the environment. And so when we meet as a community to talk about how we're going to manage growth and how we're going to respect property values and how we're going to be good stewards of the environment, then we have to really bring it all to the table together. And I'm not sure we can do that. I certainly can't talk about it in a minute and a half, but it's something that is the core issue before us today because we want to preserve the way of life we have in Wicomico County. We want to be responsible. We want to have choices. It's going to take a lot more discussion.
John Cannon.
Thank you. Growth is going to happen regardless. I mean, growth is going to be there. Joe, you left out one part of the story there. One developer turned us down, but we partnered with another developer at Village Downriver. They actually developed a system, standalone wastewater treatment facility. But we put into the contract, similar contracts as are in Worcester County, that you know, at any point in time, if the county wanted to buy that from the developer for $1, we could do that. Purpose of that, because at the time we did believe in a wastewater treatment authority countywide. My thought process, we met with Somerset County and Worcester County to see how they, you know, how successful their processes were. Our thought process at the time was that if you could do that, you could have standalone facilities all over the county, and that would help alleviate the problem with septic systems. A more recent idea is to have a central system in Wicomico County, maybe near the landfill. And then you can go and you can truck it in or you can pump it in. Septic systems with the regulations now can cost you $20,000. You can't afford it. People can't sell their house right now if they have a failing septic system. A holding tank costs about $1,500. So let's see if we can work on that. I think it's a good idea. We might get WIP credits along the way, and you might even be able to develop an effective PDR program for transfer development rights, et cetera, in the process. Thank you.
Matt Holloway.
Yeah, I think this also is a great opportunity for collaboration between the county and the city, whether it's through annexation or whether it's through a urban service district. If you look at the border of Salisbury right now, it's a mess. The county infiltrates the city infiltrates the county. I think it's a good opportunity to smooth out the boundaries, address the majority of the failing septics, which just happen to be in those transition areas. If we work together and we try to somehow create, whether it's using the already established sewer system of Salisbury, or whether it's through small package plants on that periphery, I think it's a great opportunity to smooth out the boundaries.
Laura Mitchell.
Thank you. There is a distinct possibility that we could end up with an urban sanitation district. They do a lot of them in Delaware. We're surrounded with them, Sussex County, Worcester County, and that's a possibility, but it's not a cheap one. Sewer treatment plants are expensive to build, they're expensive to run. So that will take a lot of collaboration. But we do have about, I believe, 60% of our population within Salisbury or the 1 mile surrounding area. So people do choose whether they want to be urban or suburban or more rural. And I think that a lot of people want to be close but not in the city for a lot of the reasons we talked about before. The problem is those developments are built pretty much at the same time, which means when the septic systems start to fail, it's going to be catastrophic because they're all going to start to go at the same time. And we're going to face situations like we did with the water issue in Fruitland, where we have to do something and we have to go searching for money. So we need to plan now for those alternatives and have something in place, so we're ready to do that. I think that's it. The package plants, that's another issue I'm concerned about. The idea is great, but the assertion in the comp plan that they would be turned over to the county in, say, 17 years, well, that's about the time they're going to start to fail. So who's going to pay for that?
I'm going to turn to the final question, and since this is a forum that's sponsored by environmental groups, it's a good question to conclude on. It says, how can we stop the tension between farmers and environmentalists? How can we work together? What can we do to do that? And we begin with Kirby Travers.
I think a great way to relieve some of the tension is to actually talk with the farmers and then listen to them. They have a voice just like anybody else in the county, and farms have been around forever, and it's got to be because they know what they're doing. You know, I think if we talk with them, they can give us ideas on how to cut certain products back to help the environment, to help everybody. I think the biggest issue is just sitting down and listening to see what the agricultural community has to say.
Larry Dodd.
Yes, sir, I'll take that question. What do we do to stop tension between the farmers and environmentalists? First, we need to get everybody seated in a room and formulate a common goal. What we're doing now is we're playing the blame game. Everybody's blaming the farmers. It's not always the farmers. I think somebody touched on it earlier when we talked about some of the sewage spills. Just this past August in Baltimore City, there was a 3.2 million gallons of sewage that flowed into the harbor during a rain. Then I went on to read the article, and it talked about many other lift stations throughout the city of Baltimore. I've read articles in the past where DC has a lot of sewage plants that are overflowing. So it's just not the farmers, and it's not the city of Salisbury. It's everyone that's outlying the Chesapeake Bay. So what to do, like I said, bring everybody to the table. Let's find some common ground and stop playing the blame game.
Josh Hastings.
I remember when I was getting my business degree, the one thing they always say was that business is about relationships. And I've always remembered that. And I definitely think when it comes to getting things done in government, it's about relationships. We can't pretend that Wicomico County has 1 million people in it, because it certainly doesn't. We only have 100,000 people. So when we have issues that are important in the environment or with agriculture, we got to have friends that are, that are in the urban areas of the state, not just the right here. So we need champions like Norm Conway and others who can reach across the side. We can't bury our head in the sand and pretend that just because the state did some sort of effort, that we didn't like, that somehow us putting our head in the sand is going to fix the problem, because it won't. We need more efforts like what County Executive Pollitt and Mr. Holloway did, was putting together a group on the septic tier map and come together a better conclusion. We need to continue to build relationships. You need to be able to go to meetings. You need to be able to listen to what's actually happening, and out of time, build relationships.
Joe Holloway.
A few weeks ago, Jim Perdue had an article in the Daily Times, and Jim said he didn't feel like the poultry companies had a seat at the table in Maryland. when it came to the environmental issues. Now, the Purdue company operates in Delaware and Virginia, so I think he had a good insight on what was going on when he said that. You know, they're talking about this phosphorus management tool, and when we talk about information, I want to recognize Paul and Michelle Chesnick, who's in the room tonight. They came into my store about a year ago and asked me about this regulation that was going through Annapolis. And I have to admit, I'd never heard of it before. Nobody on my council had ever heard of it before. Nobody in Dorchester, Somerset, and I believe Worcester had never heard of this before, but this regulation was fast-tracking through Annapolis. So we quickly got some meetings together, and through the farmers coming together and raising enough ruckus, they've slowed this thing down. I don't know where it's headed, but that's a perfect example of why there's no trust between the farmers and the environmental community, because these things get passed along without anyone knowing about them. Thank you.
To capitalize on that, Joe, along with the trust of each other, also having the teaching. The environmentalists have learned things that they need to teach the farmers. Teaching is the operative word. We've all been through, and we know what happened at the Hudson Farm. The Waterkeeper Alliance, when they went up in their helicopter, they saw what they thought was one thing. It turned out to be something else. Did anybody get the heck out of the helicopter and go down and talk to the people and say, what can we do? If this is a problem, let's correct it. They're too quick to sue everybody. Everybody wants to sue. EPA is self-sustaining because of the fines and everything else that they're trying to keep on everybody. We need to talk to each other. We need to say, you know, it's just as Eric lives down next to me. If he sees I'm doing something wrong next to the river, please tell me. And at the same time, if I know something you're doing that I can help you with, I'll be more than happy to, whether it's building a house or whatever you're doing. So, I mean, we need to learn to talk to each other instead of just calling an attorney and trying to sue each other. Thank you.
Rick Paulett.
I think I answered this in my opening statement about tearing down silos, and as Josh says, building relationships. I want to share just one moment that came out of that roundtable exercise that Matt and I chaired. We had 21 or 22 people meet over in the Midway room on 2 nights in October from 5 o'clock until 9 o'clock. And they were grueling work sessions. They were moderated by the Bosserman Center for Conflict Resolution right here at Salisbury University. And as I said, it was an attempt to get the right people at the right table so that we could talk about real solutions, real relationships. There was one moment where it all really clicked. And as I watched Karen Lukacs, as the chair of the Wycomico Environmental Trust, turn to Freddie Moore, a farmer that I've known since we were born in Allen, she looked at him and you could see she was pleading to understand what it was he wanted. That's what she said. What is it you want? What is it you're trying to do? What do you need? And Freddie looked at her, and Freddie, you know, as I say, he's been battling the weather, he's been battling the government, he's been battling neighbors all his life. He said, I just want options. I don't want to sell, I don't want to develop, but I need to know that I have value in my land in case I need it sometime. And so you could see the reaching across just to understand each other. And if we didn't accomplish anything else, and we did, just to see the understanding develop was worth that exercise. And that's how we break down the barriers between farmers and environmentalists. That's how we build a stronger community.
John Cannon.
I can understand why the farmers are upset. Nobody likes mandates. We don't like mandates ourselves. It has nothing to do with whether it's an agriculture issue or anything else. If the state comes down and they impede upon your rights or your privileges, you're going to get upset about that. I was glad to see that when Buddy Hance came down here and talked to the farmers, Michelle, you were there, you had a lot of good comments to make. I was pleased to see that Buddy Hance backed up a little bit and said, okay, we'll revisit this. I hope the turnout, I hope they don't disappoint us with their turnout and the results that develop. But I was at least glad to see that they backed up on that. I think it's the county's job probably to act as the best we can as a buffer with the state of Maryland and our citizens here, if the state will allow us to continue to have our own autonomy. Working through the Chesapeake Clean Coalition, together with the Rural Farmers Coalition or the Rural Counties Coalition, those are measures we can take, and we have taken. I think they're good measures to strengthen our position in the state of Maryland, and it's going to be up to us. Again, I talked earlier about how the candidates for governor had said they believed in environmental measures, but not at the expense of the farmers. That's a really big step if they keep to their word on bridging the gap that exists right now.
Matt Holloway.
As I said in the beginning, I truly believe that farmers are the best environmentalists. we're also the best ally of these environmental organizations. And you guys need to realize that and use us to that advantage. We're the only segment of the TMDLs and the WIPs that are actually on track to achieve the goals that have been set out by the state and the environmental organizations. And to me, it's a basic question of economics. Fortunately for you, technology, for the environmental organization, technology is on your side. With the soil samples, the tissue samples for plants today, as a farmer, I don't apply any more nutrients than I need to produce the best crop that I can on that soil. So I'm not going to apply excess. There's not going to be excess that makes it into the Chesapeake Bay. So you need to really embrace what the farmers are doing and try to be on our side.
Laura Mitchell.
I think there are a couple of things here, bringing everybody to the table, but when they get to the table, they have to be willing to talk and exchange ideas and come up with those options. You can sit at a table in a restaurant and not talk to your neighbors, or you can sit at the family dinner table and have those conversations. I'm thinking of Thanksgiving dinner where you've got turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes and all the choices. And you don't want to walk in there and say, I want turkey. Do I have to have turkey or mashed potatoes? I want all of it. And I think that's part of what we have to look at, is it's not an A, B, or C. It's A, B, C, A and B and C and probably D, E, and F. We need to have choices. We need to take a lot of approaches in addressing this and bringing everybody to the table. Nobody has all the answers. I don't have all the answers for sure. Everybody's got a little bit to add to that. We have to be willing to talk about it, and we have to be willing to hear what the other people are saying so that we can come up with those solutions.
Mark Kilmer.
I think right now there's a fundamental lack of trust among many in the agricultural community towards environmental organizations, and I think that's a large part of the problem. I think that the Hudson lawsuit confirmed the worst fear of a lot of farmers towards environmental groups. And I know not all environmental groups are the same, but I think there's a tendency to lump them all together. And I think breaking down that mistrust is important because, you know, as Matt said, farmers can be the strongest allies environmentalists have. Farmers have a long-term view for their land. And if you pollute the land and pollute the water, that is something that will hurt you in the long run. And I think farmers need to be convinced that the methods and the tools that are being suggested by environmental groups will work and be effective. And I think right now they're not necessarily convinced of that. And I realize that that's something that needs to be worked on both sides, but I see breaking down the mistrust between the two communities as something that is fundamental and something that should be a focus of everyone in Wicomico County.
We want to thank the candidates for being here, and then I encourage, by the way, the audience to give these candidates a hand.
Thank you, Don. And I would agree that that last question was very fitting to wrap up this forum. Wanted to note that PAC 14 will be broadcasting an edited version of this forum beginning sometime next week and running through the election. We do have a short list of folks that we want to be sure and thank, and that begins with you all for coming out here tonight. Our candidates, Delmarva Public Radio and Don Rush for moderating, PAC 14 for coming out and filming, the Wicomico Environmental Trust for co-sponsoring, our timekeeper, as well as the Wicomico Youth and Civic Center that made this space available for us this evening. One shameless plug, if anyone is interested in experiencing a little bit of the environment that we discussed tonight firsthand, Chesapeake Bay Foundation is sponsoring a river discovery paddle on Saturday, November 1st in one of our local creeks here in Wicomico County. If you would like to sign up or get more information, please see Hillary Gibson. She'll be in the back on your way out the door. Otherwise, hope you all have a safe ride home, that you enjoyed the forum this evening, and don't forget to vote. Thank you very much for coming.